Hey, this is Pradeep with Sensatura, and today I am sharing my impressions of Barénia Intense from Hermès. I hope to give some background information about this new release, then expand upon the smell, how it wears, also compare it with the original Eau de Parfum, and conclude with whether this is worth checking out. This is a September 2025 release composed by their in-house director of perfumes, Christine Nagel. Now, this is not my own bottle. I try to avoid blind buying as much as possible. A friend of mine was able to get a couple of them during a pre-release event. I borrowed it from her for this video some time ago. Obviously, it will also let me get to know the fragrance better if I ever decide to purchase it. As for the presentation, the box is very similar except for the darker red accents. The bottle is also similar. It has the same dog collar bracelet design. The bottle itself is a darker shade of yellow, and you can only be sure by looking at the bottom whether it's an EDP Intense or EDP. It's not visibly printed. Now, the original Eau de Parfum came out in 2024. It was a mixed bag for me. It had some interesting ideas, but ended up being an underwhelming creation. The incorporation of highly stylized, trendy materials like the infamous Akigala wood was not something I was thrilled about. The marketing also left me perplexed. It was advertised as this first Hermès Chypre fragrance, took a decade to create, and all that jazz. I could vaguely see what they were trying to achieve. In my review of the original Eau de Parfum, I called it a high-tech Chypre, which is a similar term they used with the H24 EDT for their new men's pillar, calling it a high-tech fougère. Ultimately, it ended up being just a strange, unconvincing fruit chuli. Still, Hermès is a brand that, in spite of some dull creations, steps back up. So I was curious to test this intense version. Now, how does it smell? It starts off with a familiar fruity berry note, as in the case of the original EDP. They call it as miracle berry. It supposedly turns bitter things to sweet. Only here, it is not as bright or fruity or sweet. Feels a bit more dense and firm. Already there is a hint of this soft leatheriness coming through. It is still recognizably the same signature, but as the name would imply, it feels more robust and grounded. The original EDP was like Fugazi. It felt like it lacked a proper base. It did not land structurally in the dry down. Add to that the Akigala wood, which creates this sort of fluorescence. It's like a chemical reaction, almost like watching boiling liquid in a metal container. The alchemy of other materials with it almost fatigued me. It wasn't that overwhelming as some other Quentin Beige creations, for instance, but it was still clearly there. This intense version has either removed it or reduced it or maybe integrated it better. Not exactly sure, but it is not as distracting anymore. It feels much more streamlined now. The floral aspects also seem to be toned down. The Eau de Parfum had this so-called butterfly lily note, which even had a hint of ginger. With the modern fruit chuli styling, it created this sort of artificial, borderline metallic effect. Thankfully, here it feels more organic and a bit more on the traditional side of things. As it dries down, the wearing experience is very smooth. The fruitiness is somehow extended far into the dry down. It seems to be this opaque coating over the leather. Speaking of which, there is a more obvious leather note in this one, which wasn't the case in the original. The inspiration is obviously from the name of the perfume itself. Barénia is this full-grain calfskin leather used by Hermès in their handbags like the Birkin, for instance. Of course, previously, they have taken inspiration from other leathers for their fragrances, be it Dobli, Walinka and such. This leather comes across softer and supple. It almost feels like it has a velvety sheen to it. It could be named Barénia Velour, and that would perfectly match it. Having said that, the leather note is not as prominent as, say, in Gallo, Violet Walinka, Kelly Kalash and so forth. It is still there and has a different olfactory impression. Similar case with the patchouli. It seems to have a more prominent role here, It is still a modernized, cleaned up woody patchouli with a hint of mossiness, nothing like a full-on dark, earthy, brown, dense patchouli. I just don't think it suits the style of the current Hermès. I have been wishing for a Hermès patchouli fragrance for a while now. It's one of the more traditional notes that they have not tackled yet. This is fine, but I would still like to see their take on patchouli, maybe with some horsey leather and peach or a fruity note. Let's call it patchouli verveine or something. That's one thing Nigel seems to do really well. Start with this modern, brisk, inky fruitiness and transition to a more robust leather or woody base. Anyway, coming back to the transition, like I said, the layer of fruitiness remains for a while. What also seems to be returning is this note of oak wood. It was very subtle in the EDP, but here it feels more robust, aged, adding depth and warmth. With the patchouli, leather and the fruitiness and the subtle earthiness, it seems to create this stewed liquor-like inflection, which comes in now and then. In the later stages, it's more of the soft, supple leather with the patchouli and the woodiness carrying through to the end. To bring back my comparison to the H24 line, there I think the EDP was an improvement over the original, especially in trying to be this modern, mossy, aromatic smell. That evolution repeats itself here. I find this flanker to be more agreeable than the original. I think it improves upon the different attributes. It's more cohesive, richer in terms of texture. Though it's not fully there, it takes it closer to be considered a modern designer Chypre. The original seemed to be more for the fans of Twilly, but this seems to be more for those who enjoy the likes of Gallo, Violet Velinka, or Agari Ben. Maybe even some other designer creations like Bottega Veneta, Eau de Parfum, or Gris Dior. I almost wish this was the original EDP, and after this we got something with an even more prominent leather and patchouli. But I digress, it's a signature release after all, so maybe that would be pushing it too far. Having said that, even something like this, only Hermès seems to be capable of doing. I don't think any other big brand would even try to do anything close to this. That's why they always have my respect. Apart from the times when they go and do something like Eau d'Alezan. I wouldn't be surprised if the fans of the original ended up not liking this. I've already seen a few comments calling this too intense. Conversely, like me, those who weren't taken with the original might appreciate this better, I think. Let's wait and see. Quickly, the note from the brand goes, quote, "Discover Barénia Eau de Parfum Intense. The mesmerizing intensity and seduction of this new blend add to its allure. Following the codes of a classic Chypre, the new intense blend heightens the delicacy of butterfly lily and the depth of oak wood. The leathery undertones highlight the intensity of patchouli absolute, resulting in an exceptionally hypnotizing trail." Unquote. In terms of pricing, I heard it's around 130 euros for a 60 ml and maybe 175 plus for 100 ml, but not totally sure yet, need to wait for the official release. Personally, I might consider a 60 ml or a 30 ml if I could find a good deal outside of retail. Overall, I think this is a clear improvement. The original Eau de Parfum was playful. It had this upward movement and this crazy diffusion in spite of not being too dense. On a couple of occasions when I visited the Hermès boutique, the scent was in the air. Then I got to know they have been using it to scent their client spaces. This new intense version lasts longer, but it is not as diffusive. It's more sleek and fluid. It also comes across mature, broad-shouldered and sensual. So yes, as for my favorite leathers from Hermès in the last decade or so under Christine Nagel, I still prefer the likes of Violet Velinka. Of course, there was Patek, which is its own thing, especially Gallo, which was in my list of the best fragrances of the quarter century. But considering they have made this for a mainstream signature release, I think they have done rather well. So that's been my thoughts on the newest Barénia Intense from Hermès. And as always, thanks for watching, take care and ciao.